Welcome to the ACI-LAC webinar called Airport Car Parking Reimagined and the Latest Trends. In today's webinar, we have the pleasure to come with our speaker, Andrew. He's the Group Business Development Director at Al-Musbah Group. So before we begin, we would like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation available. You can choose either Spanish or English from the globe icon in your Zoom menu. If you prefer not to hear the original audio, simply click on Mute Original Audio. And as in previous webinars, we have the chat function disabled. So if you want to submit a question for the speaker, please send it to the email address shown in the screen, info@aci-lac.io, and we will address the questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So now I would like to hand it over to Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for being here.
Thanks, Carla. And I'll just share the presentation here. So thank you to ACI Latin America and Caribbean for asking me to come and present today. For me, it's this evening. I'm talking to you from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And this webinar today follows on from a presentation I did at the commercial conference in Chile a couple of months ago. And so I have pleasure in going through this presentation with a wider audience, and I'm looking forward to any questions at the end as well. Just a bit of background on myself. So as Carla said, I'm the Group Business Development Director for Al-Musbah. I've been here since 2012, and about 20 years of providing airport parking solutions since 2005 in the airports in the US, the UK, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Australia, and New Zealand. And with ACI, I'm the ACI World Business Partner Representative for the Middle East and Asia Pac region. And in fact, I chair the ACI World Business Partner Program, serving on the ACI World Governing Board, representing the 860 industry partners that are part of ACI. And I've been a contributor to ACI's ANARA program since its inception, focused around ground transport and concession models. Al-Musbah Group is a large Saudi-based company, and we've been in the aviation business for over 40 years, and around duty-free, retail, food and beverage, VIP services, airport hotels, and obviously parking as well. And we operate about 50,000 car park spaces across the Middle East region. And we also manage about 280,000 other car park spaces for municipalities in on-street and off-street car parks. The parking business is called Morgif, which is actually the Arabic word for car parking. In addition, we also have a sister company that focuses on tender consulting, parking system design, technology and solution strategy for airports. And we don't do management contracts with airports, so we don't operate in airports where we're getting paid to supply staff. All of the concession contracts that we have are focused on DFBOT, design, finance, build, operate, transfer contracts. We will also do BOT contracts around static and automated structures where it's justified. And we have our own technology center inside the group. And that's everything from the back office system for the car park management system through to having Android and iOS developers for our parking app, which has about 1 million downloads currently. In terms of airport parking here in the Middle East region, we are the largest airport parking operator of 7 international airports, including the world's largest international airport, Dubai Airport, that we've been operating since 2016, and through to Queen Alia Airport in Jordan, which is a smaller regional hub in the Middle East as well. Today's challenges that we hear from airports that we speak to is infrastructure aging capacity. Do you build more multi-story car parks, or do you go automotive? How to deal with ground transport operators and people like Uber, etc. And what about the move to e-charging? And what are the other areas for ancillary revenue development outside of core car parking revenue? And what are the types of contracts that are available to engage on? And when it comes to technology, should there be a barrier or shouldn't there be a barrier? So these are the main points I'm going to hit on in the presentation today. Many airports, particularly in North America, have very aging infrastructure that's now 35 to 40 years old. I've seen in some airports, such as Atlanta, where they've had to close parts of their multi-story car parks just simply from a safety perspective. And many of these car parks, as well as being aging in infrastructure, were designed with car park spaces based on 1970 cars. So they're not necessarily designed for very large GMC Yukons, other large cars. And so it makes using the spaces and damage to the cars more of an issue today than it was back then. Some airports we talked to have also reached capacity from a terminal development point of view, but they're expanding their terminal, but maybe not the car park, and not necessarily seeing the two things actually are part of the same ecosystem within inside the airport for dealing with people both coming in as well as departing. The issue with automated parking buildings is the fact they're single purpose. We built the first automated car park here in Saudi Arabia, but the building is not a multi-purpose building. It can only ever be used for the automated parking. And I'm going to talk a bit later about what the constraints that means for that as well, versus considering building new infrastructure that can be adapted. So further down the track over the next 20 years, if there's automated vehicles, the less of a use with inside the car park, maybe you want to convert a couple of floors of a car park into a hotel or into offices or into dark kitchen setups. And so it's about future-proofing the design. Today, we don't just build a multi-story car park. It will always incorporate a mixed use into the design, where the pillars are, the layouts of the car park, where the ramps are, so that we can repurpose that building over time. For ground transport operators, we've seen that in some airports, including the airports that we operate, as well as other airports, a 10% consistent year-on-year drop in parking revenue as a result of the ground transport apps. And some airports have been in fear of it, that this is causing them to lose a vital part of their parking revenue. Our view is to embrace them and charge them. And so in our airports, we have done that. We've now brought them into the car parks. We've given them dedicated areas, given areas for waiting for the passengers to wait for the car, and we're charging them a fee for it, and we're charging them a 1 hour fee. So whether or not they're just there for 5 minutes grabbing the passenger, or whether or not they're there for 10 or 15 minutes, we're charging them a 1 hour fee. So we've actually turned it into a revenue stream to keep that revenue coming in, and that's replacing now the revenue that had historically been lost by the passengers going to a forecourt area for their Uber pickup or similar. EV charging really does require a major power cable infrastructure. And if you've got an older airport, delivering that infrastructure to the level required can be quite a challenge to do, and also quite expensive to go back and retrofit. May have heard of a thing called EV-ULR, which is electric vehicle ultra long range. And this is a new type of battery technology that is being developed, that is starting to come into the market. And this is going to give vehicles the ability to have around a 1,200-mile range. So even further than the traditional petrol tank gave people. And so we think that once that comes to market and has proven itself, then we will see a greater need to putting EV chargers into the car park. Here in Saudi Arabia, there are very few electric vehicles, so there isn't the pressure here to be putting charging in. You go a couple of hours flight to Dubai, and the adoption of Chinese and Tesla EV vehicles is much greater, and so we see EV charging points to be far more ubiquitous there than we do here. One of the issues with putting in EV charging is then being able to manage the EV charging. The last thing you want is someone that's traveling for 3 days to turn up to the airport, plug their car in, and get on a plane and leave for 3 days. And so being able to manage how those spaces get turned over so that everybody gets to have a go at being able to charge their vehicle is a key part now of the airport parking operation. In many countries where electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging has become quite mature. There's also companies that are out there now in North America and in Europe that are now offering EV charging on a subscription basis. So for a fee of around $500 each month per bay, they will come and kit out as many EV chargers as you need. They will do the investment into the infrastructure to provide the cables big enough and thick enough to be able to pull the power through from the grid, and deliver the whole solution with a payment mechanism for the customer for a monthly fee. So it doesn't always have to be a large capital cost. There is companies out there that are offering it on a subscription basis, so charging as a service. Ancillary revenue is another major part to developing the parking revenue, and it's been very successful to use in a lot of car parks geared at very different markets. So premium XXL parking, nested parking, is being able to provide a premium area where you have larger car park spaces. These spaces would tend to be 3.4 meters wide by 6 meters deep. So whether or not someone wants to park their Porsche, or they have a large Cadillac SUV that they need to park, they can use the XXL parking, knowing that their car is going to be protected from damage. And there's a number of airports across Europe that are now adopting this type of parking solution. It enables them to be able to charge a much higher premium rate, so their space turnover and revenue per space is greatly increased from the standard car parking that was before. These tend to be located closer to the terminal as well, as part of that premier passenger experience. Online pre-booking as well. We see many airports advertising online pre-booking. We also see many of the airlines now further developing their ancillary revenue. And so the airlines now, as well as being able to book your hotel and book a rental car and book maybe a fast track service through the airline, they're also now adopting car parking. Maybe able to see on the slide there, for example, that in Dubai, we integrate that in Dubai, both into Dubai Airport's website, which allows people to go online and pre-book the parking at the terminal and at the car park space that they need. But it also is an example there from a fly-to-buy ticket, where I'd actually booked a ticket recently, and it pops up for me to be able to make the parking booking. So while the passenger is there, they've got their credit card, they've made the payment, they can go online and pre-book their ticket through the airline at the same time. They don't have to go to another area. And so we are working more and more with the airlines to provide that service, because the travel for the passenger begins with them making the airline reservation, and so then deciding on how they will get to the airport. So we want to make that seamless and bring those two things together, those two tasks together. Car washing, both in the car park, but also being able to offer a car spa experience. We rolled out in Abu Dhabi Airport a number of years ago a luxury hand washing car spa experience, where people could leave their car there for the day. And it was very popular with airport staff, particularly towards the end of the week prior to the weekend, and people want their cars cleaned. We were very busy with staff, but also for people that won't maybe just want to get their car quickly washed because they're picking up their mother and they haven't cleaned their car out for 3 months, so they want to give it a quick clean, through to people that want to have a full detail done of their vehicle. Other examples of valet parking revenue include I've experienced dry cleaning service in New Zealand, the national airline, for their frequent flyers. You could leave your suit or clothing in the back of the car, and when you checked in the car at the valet parking, you told them you had a suit in the back. They had a deal with local dry cleaners that was close by to the airport, and they would get it dry cleaned, and it would be hanging up in my car when I came back, and I'm paying the airport for that fee. It was a convenience. Refueling, recharging is another aspect, and car servicing. In Australia and New Zealand, you see a lot of airports that have done deals with Audi, General Motors, Mercedes, BMW, so that you can drop your car off at the valet area, and the dealership will come and pick the car up, take it away, service it, and then return the vehicle back, and you provide a service for that as well. These are very popular and very easy to deploy ancillary revenue streams. In terms of the types of contracts that are really out there in the market today, there has been the traditional type of management fee. This is very popular up till maybe 10 years ago. These would be a traditional service fee-based type of contract, maybe a 1 year through to a 5-year term, but it's a very labor fee focus. So this is having people changing ticket rolls, fixing barriers, maybe cleaning the car park, and really just providing bodies on the ground in the car park. The issue is that it's not aligned with the airport objectives for the car park in many cases. It's not working on how to drive revenue because they're being paid a fee. So for those operators, they're wanting to have more and more staff because they're making margin on top of the staff fee. So the more staff they can have at the airport, the more money that they will make. But this is not aligned to the airport objectives, which is to drive revenue. And maybe they will have some kind of profit share in place, but they really don't have a key stake in the game to be able to grow their parking revenue. The airport still has to make the capex for the equipment. And as we've often seen in airports, you end up where the airport has decided to put in a technology from company A, and they've got an operator that maybe isn't familiar with that car parking technology platform. Maybe they're familiar with a different one, and then you end up in a situation where there's issues with the technology because the operator doesn't understand the technology, and the technology provider is saying, well, the operator doesn't know how to operate it, and the poor airport is left in the middle. We've seen the concession fee model become far more popular particularly in larger airports. And this is bringing a concession fee that is along the lines of other major concessions in the airport. Now, if you look at the ACI statistics that have been done on car parking, in most cases, the airport parking revenue will be the second largest revenue generator behind retail. And so our view is that, therefore, the type of contract should reflect something that is that important to non-aeronautical revenue. And so it's a different type of partnership approach. These would be maybe a 7 to a 10-year term of contract. Similar terms and conditions as you have with a duty-free of, excuse me, of paying a minimal annual guarantee, plus maybe a revenue share. In this case, the operator invests into the equipment, and the operator's objectives are then aligned to the airport, and that's to run a very efficient, very service-based airport parking experience, and to drive new business marketing campaigns, be responsible for the marketing campaigns, and look at ancillary revenue opportunities, as we talked about before. Today, particularly in the emerging markets of the world, such as the airports in South America and also here in the Middle East, is seeing design, finance, build, operate type of contracts. And this is particularly for new airport developments, where the airports are looking for private sector investment to maybe come and build a brand new airport terminal, a new VIP terminal, maybe additional runway or taxiways, and in this case, it's carving out the parking development and the operation on a long-term concession. We've had discussions where the investor is going to come in who focuses on building the airport terminal and the airport infrastructure, and they would like to bring a company in to be able to actually invest to build the new car park and operate the car park in that particular case. From a technology point of view, the visitor process today inside the market, and this is very much a technology that's driven by an operator, as opposed to technology that's driven by technologists that don't and never have operated a car park before. So we pride ourselves on the fact that, for example, we're an operator and a technology company. Often you'll see an operator or you'll see a technology company, not often the two of them together. And so in this particular case, for a visitor that's coming to the airport, maybe to drop someone off or pick someone up, they'll arrive. Camera reading license plate recognition will then deliver a ticket with the plate number on it and a QR barcode. The customer parks in the car park. When it's time for them to leave, they then make their payment, and providing a full range of payments, whether or not that's paying at an automated payment station or a scan and pay. So using their smartphone, they can just scan the ticket and straight away it goes to a payment gateway. In that particular case, they don't even need to download an app. They're able to just scan it. It goes to a payment gateway, and then they make their payment and exit the car park as well. In some cases, you see, particularly in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, for payment at exit. So they can just make the payment at the exit barrier where there is a tap and go card facility. For staff parking is a big issue in airports, and be able to manage the staff parking so the staff are not parking in customer parking. The other thing is being able to manage the airport staff parking so that they are not exceeding the amount of time. Many airports we've seen staff abusing the parking by actually parking there when they go on holiday. And that means that there's not enough spaces because you've got staff that are there. So we tend to put a parking rule in and restrict the amount of time a staff member can be in the car park, typically 17 hours. they're not going to be at work or their shift is not going to be longer than 12 hours. And so a 17-hour time for them to leave the car park and then come back in the following day. And we're using RFID technology. We see as the leading type of technology to use. In this case, they have a tag that's attached to their vehicle. In that tag is a whole bunch of data. If the staff member has more than one vehicle, then they can have a tag in every vehicle, but it's registered to the same person, and so only one vehicle may enter at any one time. They turn up at the car park, the RFID tag reads the number plate, reads the vehicle tag, they come in, they park, and when they finish, they just drive out. One of the benefits with RFID is that at staff parking, you have staff at the airport operating under shifts. So therefore, you have a lot of people arrive at the same time and depart at the same time. And the benefit of RFID technology is that if you're using long range, the long range readers, is they will read the car as it's approaching. And the benefit of this is that they don't need to stop. Usually if someone has to stop, get their proximity card, tap it against a device, that can be anywhere between 3 and 7 seconds for them to do that. And if you have a staff shift change, it slows down the entry and the exit. With a long range reader with RFID, we can read the car as it approaches, and the barrier will come up and they will be able to exit the car park without having to stop at all. For customers that are using either the app or through the website to do an online pre-booking process, is fairly standard. They can go online, make the booking based on their flight arrival time, when they want to arrive ahead of their flight, and when they're going to be returning back. And they will receive a QR code. When they arrive at the airport, they just simply show the QR code. The information is there. The barcode then will allow the barrier to be lifted, and they park in the designated area. Typically, where possible, you'll tend to see the people that make an online pre-booking will be given more of a premium area in the car park, usually a nested area. It's maybe closer to the terminal as part of the incentive to pre-book and prepay online. You get a bit more of a premium experience. When the passenger comes back, they just get in their car and they drive out. In many cases, the technology today, the number plate is read automatically, the barrier goes up without even having to sometimes show the code, and they can leave. If someone has booked to arrive back on a Sunday after a weekend away, they miss their flight, maybe they don't come back till Monday. When they get in their cars to leave, there's obviously going to be a difference between their arrival time on Sunday and when they arrive on the Monday, and it will tell them that they need to pay the difference. And if they have the technology with the payment at the exit, as I talked about a little earlier, then they can just make that payment there for that extra day that they were parked in the car park and to be able to leave. So the technology helps make sure there isn't any leakage from people going outside of their online booking. Using barrierless parking is something that has started to be adopted inside shopping malls, particularly, and inside some office parks as well, for people to be able to park. The issue with barrierless parking inside the airport is there's a few considerations to make, and it's very much a local thing. It depends on the rules and the regulations. If people have tags, visit countries like Singapore, for example, where everybody has a tag. In the UAE, all cars registered there also have a tag in them as well, which is used for highway tolls. Inside the car park, taking out the barriers and putting the tag in is fine, unless you have someone that's come from interstate and they don't have a tag and they think this is great, they can drive out. In that particular case, you have revenue leakage. and depending on the jurisdiction will depend as to what recourse there is in your state or in your country to be able to enforce that and to be able to recover that money back. Having the barriers in place help protect from that revenue leakage, that people can still pay through a smart tag type of system, but if they don't have a smart tag system for whatever reason, then we're still able to capture that revenue by using the barrier. The other core parts of the technology is the license plate recognition, RFID tag, as I talked about before, APM machines, entry and exit columns, which can have payments built into it, facial recognition system built into it, and a QR barcode. For payment channels, there's a wide range of ways to be able to pay today, whether or not that's through traditional automatic payment machines, through the exit column, as I talked about before, but also smartphone technology today, scan and pay. So just scanning the barcode, going straight to a payment gateway page, making the payment and be able to leave. And in these particular cases, this would tend to be linked up to the back-end server, which is operating on high-speed fiber network, which means that by the time the person gets in their car and drives to the exit, the license plate recognition at the exit will read that car has paid, and the barrier goes up and they drive out. They don't need to stop to show a code or to show a ticket. It improves the free flow of the traffic, which in airports, such as Dubai Airport, for example, which has very high multiple peaks during the day of traffic coming through, helps reduce the congestion, the frustration, and improves the experience for the car park user as well. Indoor visual-based parking systems that you'd see shopping centres around the world that not only will use camera-based technology to be able to guide people to where there is a car park space, but this also provides CCTV inside the car park as well. So if someone has an accident or some other issue happens involving an individual, the camera-based technology captures that information as well to be able to use as evidence with the particular issue that has come up. The other second component of the functionality of having an indoor visual-based parking guidance system is the Find a Car system. Someone comes back, as I get older, even when I visit the airport, I can forget where I parked the car. I simply put in my number plate, and straight away it's going to tell me not only where is my car parked, but it's also going to tell me how to get from that device to where my car is as well. Whether or not that's going up to different levels, walking through to be able to find the vehicle. As well as indoor, is now using outdoor visual-based parking guidance systems. So one of the great issues that there's been for a very long period of time is how do you deal with at-grade outdoor car parking to try and give a similar experience for those that are maybe parked in a multi-story car park. And today there's technologies out there that are using GPS technology with cameras to be able to provide an outdoor visual-based guidance system. So you have multiple cameras that are scanning over every car park space, which has been GPS plotted. And so the camera is then monitoring that space. And when a vehicle pulls into the space, it then knows that that car park space is now occupied through the AI in the camera technology. And so now you're still getting the accuracy of the parking guidance system based on car park space availability. You're not doing it based on cars driving over magnetic loops that just simply tell you how many cars were there, not necessarily how many spaces are available. This now is become the new way, at the same time using the camera technology to be able to pick up CCTV of monitoring what's happening in the car park as well. Also, traditional CCTV analytics as well. This can be set up in the car park. is also set up to have cameras on entry and exits to the car parks to be able to pick up accident damage that happens where people drive into the equipment, which happens a lot more than people think. But also helps from a control center perspective by having the cameras behind things such as payment machines. So if someone is having a problem at the machine and they click onto the help button and through the intercom, they can now be basically a camera over the shoulder of the customer and be able to see maybe what the issue is the customer's having. Common one is people trying to put the car park ticket in where the credit card goes or trying to put it in to a note reader. And so being able to look over their shoulder and be able to see that can help resolve the issue that the customer's having. So in summary, trendy is not always practical or profitable. People talking about having an automated car park looks great idea, but the problem is that building will only ever be used for that. You have 4 walls and you have nothing inside it except for an automated parking system. So when you take out that automated parking system, you just have 4 walls. With building more of a traditional structure, you can repurpose that structure, as I said before, maybe into hotels, into offices, into kitchens, or into other retail areas as well. Making sure that your contract, your operator type of contract is aligned with your airport objectives as well. If you want to be able to really drive revenue in the car parking business and you have minimum staff that can focus on that part of the business, but you really want to do it, make sure that your contract with your operator is aligned to make that happen. There's no point in having an operator that's just going to be a glorified staff recruitment company to provide you a bunch of people on the ground, but they're not going to help you be able to drive the revenue. Ancillary revenue is there and is very simple and easy to deploy. It's about working with the other airport stakeholders, particularly the airlines, because that's why people are coming to the airports. And most airlines today have an ancillary revenue team and are very keen to work on how to drive the parking revenue up. And the technology allows that to be able to happen very simply on their website as well. And the future proof of the infrastructure development, as I said before, is building more of a traditional structure, but designing it in a way that allows it to become used for other purposes down the track. And as I mentioned before, you look at the ACI statistics, parking revenue is often the second largest revenue generator for non-aero behind retail. So don't treat it like the cleaning contract by paying a monthly fee for a certain number of people to be on site. It should be treated in a way that reflects the value of the business and the value of the opportunity for the business to be there as well. So with that, thank you very much for attending the webinar, and I'll hand back to Carla.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. I don't know if do you see my screen now, Andrew?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Before we start the Q&A session, I just would like to remind you that you can send your questions to info@aci-lac.io as we see here in the screen. We have one question here, and it says, what is the first step to move forward to improve our airport parkings?
So it's a good question. Usually the best thing is to really understand what's happening with the parking. Often, there's an expression in English, you don't know what you don't know. And often my experience is that people have thought, we don't have revenue leakage, we know everything's under control, we know what's going on. And actually, when we've taken over the operation, we've actually found out that there is a lot of revenue leakage. that there's people that are taking backhanders particularly for staff, moving from one car park maybe into a premium car park, and they're not paying the difference. Or they don't realize that the equipment isn't working 100% of the time online, so they're missing a lot of transactions, but they don't know that. So coming in and doing an audit, first of all, from a consultancy point of view, use a company that specializes in airport parking. Airport parking is very different to retail parking and different to office parking. So I would say the first step is to really get a good gap analysis on what's happening right now, and then from there looking at where some easy wins are, maybe from using technology or from some operational advisory to be able to then plug those gaps and then look at new opportunities to be able to grow the revenue.
Okay, we have another question here. See, how can EV charging be positioned not just as a green initiative, but as a meaningful contributor to ancillary revenue streams in airport parking?
That's very much a regional question, depending as to the status of EV charging. As I mentioned in the presentation, here in Saudi Arabia, EV cars are still really not in the market here. In fact, Tesla hasn't even launched in Saudi Arabia. So in this market for here, we don't really need to look at EV charging in airports at this point. In the more mature markets where there is EV charging technology now that allows for you to be able to manage that in a way so that you get the space turnover. You want to be charging people for accessing the power. So you tend to charge people for having car park access, but also then to be able to draw down on that power. That would often be through a partnership with whoever is the supplier. They will provide a tap and go, a credit card capability for the person to charge their car, and there would be a revenue share between the provider, the EV charging, and the airport. I mentioned before there's a company that does it even as a software subscription. So you can just pay a monthly fee. They come and install all of the equipment, and then they just do a direct 50-50 revenue share on everything that comes through.
Okay, we have another one here. I don't know if they are two or it's one. Here it says, which are the main policies, tariffs, rates applied for people that work in the airport?
So staff parking, there will, once again, depending on the airport, but putting in a parking policy for staff. So staff parking should not be right outside the terminal, because then you're giving away revenue. That's a premium location that passengers will pay a premium fee for, and you'll get the space turnover. So staff parking should be in an area that's further away from the terminal, but they should be paying a staff fee. There's costs attached with operating a staff car park. Staff fees vary from country to country as to what that would be for staff parking, because it depends maybe what's been negotiated with the union or whether or not it's subsidized by the airport. But there's a cost to having staff parking, and so that's why there tends to be a fee attached. And also, as I mentioned before, putting in a time period that the car can only be there for 17 hours out of every 24, for example, to get the space turnover. Then you need less spaces for staff because you don't have staff abusing it by staff parking in a staff car park and then going away on their 2 weeks summer holiday.
Okay, let me see here. I have some questions here. So it says, can you explain the importance of having a defined access road considering security features along with drop and pickup zones, and also how having this designated route then caters to the ability to an enhanced parking experience?
Well, that sounds like a chargeable piece of work to be able to do that. Very difficult to be able to do that without actually having a look at the layout and to be able to see as to the current layout. And so I'd encourage that whoever sent that question through, hopefully they got my details that are there. If they want to reach out to me directly, I'd be happy to have a chat with them, or they can contact you, Carla, through the info
Perfect.
email address there, and you can connect them with me.
Perfect. I will link it to you. So we have another question here. What are the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing the management of airport parking facilities compared to operating them directly by the airport concessionary or operator?
That's a question that often gets asked. So the airport parking is a specialized type of parking. People often think that, well, it's just airport parking, the money comes in, it's kind of just there. But, airport parking revenue is like oxygen. You only appreciate it when there isn't any. And for the airport operators, they tend to be airport operators that are focused on operating terminals, maybe airside operations. We don't tend to find that airport operators or airport concessionaires, so maybe they want a concession to come and run an airport, actually have a strong airport parking focus. A number of customers that I've had in different parts of the world have been airport concessionaires, but know that their focus and what they do well at is running an airport terminal, but what they don't do well is running airport parking, and that's why they bring a specialist in. It's the second largest non-aeronautical revenue stream, so you want to make sure you have someone that has the skill set to properly manage that. Comes back to the comment I made earlier, you don't know what you don't know is happening or not happening in your car park.
Okay. Here I have another question. Is it advisable for the airport, advisable for the airport to directly acquire the infrastructure and equipment required for parking operations, such as barriers, ticket validators, software, etc., or it is more efficient for these to be provided as part of the service by the outsourced parking operator?
I recommend that you leave it over to the operator. If you look at your duty-free operation inside the airport, you don't pay for the fit out. You're not paying for their payment systems. You're not paying for their inventory management system inside the retail shop. So why would the parking equipment to buy the equipment? Often what has happened in airports that buy the equipment themselves is they won't invest into refreshing that equipment and end up with very old equipment because they're trying to not have to invest and re-amortize for new equipment. My recommendation is put the pressure onto the operator. Then the operator is going to bring technology that they know and that they understand how to operate as well. And you don't end up with this friction between the airport technology and maybe the operator not understanding that particular brand of technology. So put it on the operator. I've had airports that have said, can you bring the technology? Because I don't want that on my bottom line. I don't want to have to deal with the amortization of the parking equipment. Bring the gear and put it in. So we tend to see a greater shift towards having the operator take responsibility for that.
Okay. We still have a couple of minutes. I just want to remind you, if you have any questions, please send it to info@aci-lac.io. We have another question here. Which are the main technologies applied today for cash payments?
Payment technologies for cash payments.
Cash payments, yes.
Wow, people still paying by cash. I mean, if people are wanting to take cash payments, most you can have cash payments built into automated payment machines for people to be able to put in to pay with the notes. If you're going to do that, make sure that you choose a piece of equipment that has built into it a note recycler, so that it will reuse the note. You don't have to keep going and changing the cassettes. But in today's market, everywhere in the world, and includes, I've been airports in different countries in Africa as well, everybody is paying using a card. So the cost of actually cash management these days compared to the cost of using credit card, I'd be recommending moving away from cash if possible.
Okay. Let me see here. I have another one here. And in Spanish. So, okay. So, what will be the recommendations regarding the final price for the service to the user?
Well, that's a study that's often done looking at other airports, maybe in that country, and also looking at other types of parking where there's chargeable parking, whether or not that's at a retail mall or that's any other place where there's a paid parking tariff in place, and also doing benchmarking for that particular region as well. So going and having a look at what are the other airports inside that particular region. That's something we often get asked to do here in the GCC region, is your benchmarking airports that are all within maybe a 2 to 3 hour flight time of the airport that's requesting that, and then benchmarking that. It's not terribly good idea that if you're in a remote location, maybe to try and benchmark against a Heathrow or a New York or a Sydney, because the costs are incredibly different. Costs to run the operation are very different in those areas. So it's looking at more within inside your city, within inside your country, and within inside your immediate region, maybe within a 2 hour flight time, and benchmarking against that.
Here, okay, we were talking about staff marking. We have another question regarding this. How does the limit on staff parking work? Does the employee receive an alert, or is it a centralized alert?
So if you're using things such as RFID technology, you can program the RFID tags with a period of time. So you can have some smarts with inside the tag. And what that does is that when you park in there and the person's driven in, it date and timestamps when they came in. So if they came in at 6 o'clock in the morning to start their shift, and you've programmed it with a 17-hour limit. So that means that if they were to leave 19 hours after they came in, as they tried to leave, it comes up onto the screen saying you exceeded your period of time, and you charge them 2 hours of the premium parking fee. And so the controls are already there with inside the software, which then goes inside the RFID tag to be able to manage that. So the staff doesn't get an alert. They just simply find when they go to leave, they've obviously been made aware. When they get their tag, they sign a document saying that they agree to the staff parking policy. The staff parking policy says it doesn't have to be 17 hours. It can be 12 hours, can be 15 hours. 17 seems to be typically what we've seen used in many airports. And if they stay along that period of time, then they will be responsible to pay the fees at X amount per hour, and they'll pay that when they go to leave, and the barrier doesn't go up and it alerts them to make the payment.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We don't have any more questions, but I just want to thank you for sharing this valuable information for our members and all the participants here. Again, if you have any question, please send it to info@aci-lac.io, and we will just follow up with the speaker and let you know the answers. So have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar.
Thank you.